Let's rank every Mario RPG by story from worst to best, starting with number 16, Puzzles & Dragons Mario Edition. The story here is that Mario is invited to Peach's castle because of some mysterious orbs, only to find Peach has already been taken by Bowser. Then you do match 3 puzzles and just fight basic Mario characters like Koopa Troopas, Goombas, Koopalings, and that's pretty much it. There's no new characters here, there's no real villain motivation. Like, you could write the plot on a post-it note and still have room for a grocery list. Like, this is basically a new Super Mario Bros. Story, and it's clearly just an afterthought. A lot of people don't even consider this to be one of the Mario RPGs, but it technically is, so I included it anyway. Now at number 15, Paper Mario Sticker Star. So unlike Puzzles & Dragons Mario Edition, I guess this at least kinda has a story. Like, where to even start with this one? The game begins at the Sticker Fest to watch the Sticker Comet. Bowser touches the comet and gets special sticker powers, and you need to get the 6 royal stickers. But before that, Kirsty, who is a sticker, joins your party to help you find the stickers.
Stickers?
The game just has such a lazy story. Besides making Bowser the main villain one game after making him a hero, he has no character development or real motives explained here. He pretty much disappears for the rest of the game until the end after this, and outside of a few story moments like the Wiggler Saga, this is basically just another new Super Mario Bros. Story that's, I guess, a little better than Puzzles & Dragons. There's no unique characters or any twists or plot points or, anything interesting to help this. Even the moments where the game tries to do something, it's just hard to care when it just feels so shallow and forced, where the developers were like, okay, I guess we have to have some dialogue. I get it's just a Mario game, but they really did the bare minimum, especially coming after a few games that had some fun adventures with unique characters, worlds, and ideas that felt like they had care put into them. There's barely anything else to say about this game because it barely gives us anything to say. And I should mention that this wasn't some random creative choice. Producer Kensuke Tanabe confirmed in an Iwata-esque interview that Miyamoto questioned whether the game needed much story at all, and asked them to use only pre-existing Mario characters. The justification was a Club Nintendo survey from Super Paper Mario, where less than 1% cited the story as a strong point, so Miyamoto just looked at that and shifted the series away from having more in-depth and unique stories. Now at number 14, Paper Mario Color Splash. Color Splash is a step above Sticker Star in the same way a puddle is a step above completely dry ground. Like, yeah, there's technically more here, but let's not get too excited. The setup's actually interesting, because Mario and Peach get a letter that turns out to be a toad who's being completely drained of color and folded into envelope form, and I know someone's gonna comment about how I pronounce envelope, I don't care. They sail to Prism Island, find the whole town deserted and colorless. The Prisma fountain that normally supplies the whole island with infinite paint is dry, which turns out to be because Bowser accidentally mixed all the paint together and created black paint, which then corrupted him, and they meet Huey, a talking 3D paint bucket who's the fountain's guardian, who asks Mario to track down the 6 big paint stars to restore everything. That's pretty much it here. The end game is shutting down Bowser's black paint factory and saving Peach. I guess the best thing here is Huey. He has an actual personality. The scenes where he questions what he actually is and what his purpose really is are better written than anything in Sticker Star. And the ending here, where he takes the black paint with him and disappears, is the most emotional moment of the game. The problem is it's the exact same template as Sticker Star, just with one decent character dropped in. Every NPC is a toad again, the big paint stars are just royal stickers with different colors again, and even the villains being possessed by a thing is because Bowser stumbled into the black paint by accident, which somehow makes it feel even more incidental than before. And if you're someone who defends Color Splash, I get it because Huey's a much better character than Kirsty in Sticker Star, but the bar is already pretty low there. Besides the main theme of the story, do you remember anything else story related that this game has to offer? Number 13, Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. Paper Jam had everything it needed to be a genuinely great story and used almost none of it. It starts with Luigi poking around Peach's attic when a scaredy rat startles him into knocking over a mysterious book, which turns out to contain the entire Paper Mario universe, and all the paper characters spill out into the regular Mario & Luigi world. And by the entire Paper Mario universe and all the paper characters, I mean Mario, Luigi, Peach, Bowser, Toads, Koopa Troopas, Goombas, and Shy Guys. Like, it was such a cool concept. They could have had pretty much any character come back, whether it's bosses or NPCs or unique enemies, and they use absolutely none of it, and that still makes me mad 10 years later. Imagine if we had, like, Dementio and Grotus and other Paper Mario villains team up to try and, I don't know, take over the Mushroom Kingdom or something. Instead, you just get Paper Mario joining your party, you have both Bowsers meeting and argue for a bit until they kidnap the Peaches, and then you spend a lot of the game collecting paper toads. Like, I guess at first it's kind of funny to see Bowser and Paper Bowser arguing with each other, but there's really not much beyond that. The developers even considered letting the trio travel back and forth between both worlds during development, and decided to not go with that for some reason. I mean, I guess this is a little better than Color Splash. I think the story is a little more omnipresent here, but again, that's not really saying much, and this was such wasted potential for what could have been a really fun story. Number 12, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Kingdom Battle knows what kind of story it wants to tell, and for what it's trying to do, I don't really hate it, even if there's not much there. It starts with a young inventor in her basement building the Super Merge, which is a device that fuses any two objects together. The Rabbids, doing their usual time travel chaos, stumble into her lab, accidentally activate it on their time machine, and a pile of Mario memorabilia, and tear a rift open into the Mushroom Kingdom. The Super Merge gets corrupted in transit and turns most of the Rabbids hostile. Mario teams up with the uncorrupted ones, Rabbid Peach, Rabbid Luigi, plus a robot guide Beepo, to track down the Rabbid that fused with the headset and stop the Megabug Vortex from tearing the kingdom apart. Bowser Jr. wants the Super Merge for himself. Bowser's on vacation until he comes back at the worst possible timing and gets turned into the final boss. And I think the Bowser on vacation thing is kind of funny, just because it changes up the story a little bit here, but there's really not much else to say here. The inventor barely appears despite being the reason any of this happened, and the Megabug is more of a visual threat than an actual character, and the Rabbids really don't have much of an arc, but it's fine for what it's going for, and it at least tries to be creative with its story. Number 11, Super Mario RPG. This is a weird one to put in a story ranking because the story isn't really what people talk about when they talk about this game, but there is more going on than it usually gets credit for. It does start with Bowser kidnapping Peach, and then Mario shows up to get her back, but instead of just being a simple Bowser kidnaps Peach story, there's a giant living sword named Exor who crashes down from the sky and shatters Star Road, and sends Mario, Bowser, and Peach flying in different directions. Star Road is what grants all the wishes in the Mushroom Kingdom, and with it broken, those wishes go unanswered. Mario has to collect the 7 star pieces to repair it while fighting the Smithy Gang, an army of sentient weapons from another dimension who wants to fill the world with weapons and eliminate wishes entirely. I'd say the game's party is really where the story actually lives here. You have Geno, who descended from the heavens and possessed the nearest available body, which happened to be a wooden doll in a kid's bedroom. And you have Mal, who thinks he's a tadpole for basically the whole game until he finds out that he's not. You even get Peach and Bowser joining your party to help you. And Bowser being a good guy in 1996 was just a wild move for the time. The story isn't very in-depth, but it has a lot more going for it than the previous games. Pretty much each area has its own independent story, like with Booster and the wedding, like the whole part on the ship with Jonathan. I think this is an example of the story being fun, but not really that great of a story, if that makes sense. Now, at number 10, we have Paper Mario. This starts with Bowser stealing the Star Rod, which can grant any wish, and he uses it to make himself. Then he imprisons the 7 star spirits in cards, lifts Peach's castle into the sky on top of his own, and beats Mario in about 30 seconds. Mario wakes up in Goomba Village and has to free the star spirits one by one so they can encounter the Star Rod. I'd say similarly to Super Mario RPG, I think what makes the story a little better, even though the plot is pretty basic, is that there is more character development, and there are more interesting stories in each chapter. Like you have Tubba Blubba stomping around in his mansion, you have Cooper who joins you because he wants to prove himself and follow in his adventurer father's footsteps, you have the whole mystery chapter, and the ending works too. Even with all 7 star spirits, their combined power still can't break through the enhanced Star Rod, and it looks like a dead end. Then you have Peach, who's been talking to Twink throughout the game. Yeah, I know, unfortunate name. And that helps Mario and the gang defeat Bowser. And something I didn't even mention is that Peach has interludes between every chapter, where she does different tasks, and this little bit of character development really goes a long way to helping this game's story. It's a pretty simple story, but I think it's done very well. Kind of similar to Super Mario RPG, but I think there's a little bit more here. 9, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. So this is a huge jump in storytelling from the first game. Like I talked about before, Kingdom Battle really didn't have much of a story, but Sparks of Hope surprisingly does. Rosalina is possessed, and you have the villain Cursa as a mutated remnant of the Megabug that gained sentience after drifting through space, feeding on light energy from the galaxy until it became something new entirely. It found Rosalina's Comet Observatory, attacked it, and Rosalina tried to fight back and got absorbed. Cursa is now wearing her body like a suit while Rosalina tries to resist. During the attack, the Lumas and Rabbids on the observatory fused into a new species called Sparks, and Cursa's whole plan is to drain them to crush what's left of Rosalina's will and take full control. So already we have quite an interesting premise for this game. Mario and the crew spend the game going planet to planet, cleaning up Cursa's darkness while picking up new teammates. The unfortunately named Edge, a spark hunter who was created by Cursa as a weapon, but defected after gaining free will. And Rabbid Rosalina, who's been searching for her hero the whole game without knowing her hero is literally right there. The moment where Cursa's grip slips mid-game and Rosalina resurfaces just long enough to hand the crew a projection crystal with the full backstory is actually really well done here. I think the main limit here is that Cursa doesn't feel like the most in-depth character, even though the premise is interesting. A lot of this feels kind of similar to the original Paper Mario in terms of how I would rank it, which is why I have it right above it. 8, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. I think Superstar Saga has one of the best setups in the whole franchise, and it actually pays off. The setup is that someone steals Peach's voice and replaces it with explosives, so every word she speaks literally blows something up like it's a Michael Bay movie. Cackletta and her assistant Fawful show up in the Mushroom Kingdom disguised as ambassadors from the Bean Bean Kingdom and pull this off before anyone knows what's happening. Her plan is to take Peach's voice to the Bean Bean Kingdom and use it to awaken the Beanstar, which is a magical artifact that only responds to a voice as pure as Peach's, and then use that power to take over. Bowser was in the middle of kidnapping Peach when this happened and now can't because she'd blow up his castle, so he teams up with Mario and Luigi specifically so he can kidnap her properly once she stops exploding. I'd say Fawful is a standout character, and his dialogue is just complete nonsense. Like when he says the mustard of your doom. Like this is one of the reasons he's the most quoted character in the series, despite barely saying anything coherent. Then the mid-game reveal that Fawful extracted Cackleta's soul with his vacuum helmet and shoved it into an unconscious Bowser's body, so the second half's main villain is just Bowser being piloted by Cackleta, going by Bowletta, and the ending where you defeat Cackleta's soul after that ridiculous boss fight has always just been a favorite of mine. Something I like about the story is also that you're in a new kingdom. You're not in the Mushroom Kingdom, you're in the Bean Kingdom. So this allows for a lot of new characters and environments, like the Jacola Woods and like Woohoo University, and it actually feels a lot different than what came before. Now again, like the previous two games, I don't think the story is super in-depth, but it's very fun for what it is, and it just feels like there was a lot more creative freedom put into this game. 7. Mario & Luigi Dream Team. I think Dream Team has a more interesting story than it gets credit for. Buried under a pacing problem that starts with the tutorial and kind of goes through the whole game where I think it just goes on a little too long. There actually is a pretty decent story underneath all of it. Kicks off with Luigi falling asleep on a magic pillow, and then chaos ensues with Phantasma. Like Mario, Luigi, Peach, and the crew had been invited to Pillow Island, which was a resort built on the ruins of an ancient civilization of pill-shaped people called Pillows. Paillos. I've never known how to pronounce this. But anyway, once Phantasma starts doing his thing, Mario has to enter Luigi's dreams to find Peach after she's been kidnapped. I think the Phantasma and Bowser alliance is where the story does its best work, because Phantasma thinks he's using Bowser as muscle, but Bowser's very obviously waiting for the right moment to turn on him. It's both kind of funny and bleak for Phantasma, who built his whole comeback around this guy and never could really trust him in the first place. There's a decent amount of pillow lore here, probably a little more than you'd expect, and I like the angle of the ancient civilization and being able to move in and out of dreams. I also think Phantasma is a really great villain. I can honestly swap this with Superstar Saga. I think Superstar Saga's story is a little more fun, but I think Dream Team's story is just a little more omnipresent and developed, if that makes sense. You know, this whole story basically starts because Luigi decides to fall asleep on a magical pillow, which is very on brand for Luigi, but honestly, maybe the real problem is that nobody gave him a comfortable chair first. And that brings me to the sponsor of this video, Boolies, specifically their EP500 ergonomic chair. If you spend a lot of time sitting at a desk, whether you're gaming, editing, writing, slowly losing your mind trying to rank Nintendo games, having a chair that actually supports you makes a big difference. The EP500 is designed around comfort and adjustability with adaptive lumbar support, adjustable armrest, a customizable seat depth, an adjustable headrest, and a reclining backrest with a built-in footrest. It also uses a breathable hybrid mesh, so the idea is that you're getting something supportive without it feeling stiff or uncomfortable after sitting for a while. Basically, instead of forcing yourself into whatever position your chair allows, the EP500 gives you more ways to adjust the chair around how you actually sit, which if Luigi had this thing, maybe he could relax normally instead of turning his dreams into an entire RPG. So check out Boolies EP500 using the link in the description, and thank you to Boolies for sponsoring this video. 6. Paper Mario the Origami King. So I wasn't really sure how to rank this. So in terms of characters and world, I would actually put this pretty low. Like, I'm personally not the biggest fan of the story, but I feel like I have to rank it a little higher just because it really does try here. Like, the story's a little more of an afterthought, plus we have some good characters here. We have some good emotional moments. So the main villain here is King Ollie, and his sister Olivia is your companion. I think the biggest problem with the Origami King is just King Ollie's motivations. He wants to origamify the entire Mushroom Kingdom because his Toad creator quote-unquote spoiled him by scribbling on his body, and then he thinks all toads are just bad and they're trying to purify everything. But then after he's beaten, he realizes the scribble is actually a message to be the best king he can be. Like, he went through all this destruction and chaos for just completely stupid reasons. So I do think this kind of brings down the story. But anyway, if we can look past that, as Mario and Luigi getting invited to Peach's castle for an origami festival, and find the town completely empty to discover Peach had been folded into an origami figure by King Ollie. And the trailer for this was actually kind of eerie when I first saw it, so when I saw it in the game for the first time, it didn't hit as hard. But anyway, Mario has to travel through 5 streamer zones and unravel each one, and eventually get to Ollie. You go through these areas and end up fighting office supplies, so I think there's only so much they could have done with the character development of the bosses, but I think what really carries this game are some of the side characters, especially Bobby the Babam. He's a Babam without a fuse. He doesn't really remember much about who he was, and you start to learn more about him as he joins your party, and then he sacrifices himself to destroy the boulder trapping Olivia. This is one of the saddest moments in the Mario franchise, and kind of helps Origami King get a little higher here. And while I don't think Origami King has the best story, in fact I would say its story is probably a little less fun than the previous ones, it at least feels like the story is progressing as the game goes on, compared to something like Color Splash or Sticker Star, where it kind of feels like the story is very dormant. Like, they only show up every now and then to just say something to push the story along. The Origami King is definitely a step in the right direction for the series. Number 5, Mario and Luigi Brothership. So this is the newest game on the list, and surprisingly the story is really good here. The world it drops you into is called Concordia, and the entire civilization is built around electrical outlet imagery. Like everyone is literally like a plug or a socket, and how exactly they were created, I don't know, maybe like the same way that the cars gain sentience in cars. Mario and Luigi get sucked through a mysterious portal and end up here, finding the Unitree, which is the giant tree at the center that kept everything connected. They meet Connie, a young botanist, which I don't know why I find so funny. Basically a botanist, but for the Unitree. And the goal is to reconnect all the islands and find whoever tore the world apart. The apparent main villain for most of the game is Zaket, a leader of the Extension Corps spreading a corruptive energy called Gloam across Concordia. You fight him and win, and then the actual villain, Reclusa, hatches from an egg that was sitting right there the whole time. Reclusa has played these games before, trapping entire populations inside dream worlds of their greatest desires while their bodies waste away. The reveal that Zaket was Connie's mentor, Kozit, the whole time, possessed and rewritten by Reclusa, means more because Connie's been grieving her disappearance for the entire game without knowing she was right in front of her. Now I think this game goes on for way too long, but I will say that the story here goes along with you, and there's also a lot of side quests that kind of build onto that. If you want to have this lower, if you didn't really like the story that much, totally fine. Again, this list is just my personal opinions, so we're not all gonna agree 100%, but I don't know, I actually really liked Brothership's story. Number 4, Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. Partners in Time has a much darker tone than you'd expect from a game where half the party are babies, and it is better for it. The whole past Mushroom Kingdom had been conquered by aliens, not visited, completely conquered. Present-day Peach had used Professor Egad's time machine to visit the past and didn't come back, and then the machine returned without her, and was instead occupied by a hostile alien. Mario and Luigi go through a time hole to find her and discover the Shroobs, which are mushroom-shaped aliens from a dying planet who came here to take it. They pretty much try to take over just every different area in the game. Then of course, with time travel logic, you end up getting Baby Mario and Baby Luigi in your party. Anyway, you spend this game collecting the Cobalt Stars, because they power the time machine and you need them to get home, while various characters almost keep warning you about them before getting shroobified mid-sentence. Then when you finally reassemble it, Baby Bowser, who'd been stealing the shards all game because he just wanted something shiny, grabs the last piece and completes it, and it releases the Elder Princess Shroob, who Peach had sealed inside during the original invasion. So you pretty much built the game's final boss yourself, without knowing. Kinda reminds me a little bit of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, where the X-Nuts unknowingly release the Shadow Queen, not knowing that she is not loyal to them. I don't know why, but I've always just found this story to be very interesting. I've always liked time travel stories, and yes, there's a lot of issues here with the time travel mechanics. Like, it does not always make sense, but I've just always found it very interesting. I really like the Shroobs as characters, and I like how each area sort of tells its own story and how the Shroobs have affected it. Number 3, Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. So I think this just has the best structure of any Mario and Luigi game. Fawful, who's led his minion from Superstar Saga, who very much did not die, has been quietly setting everything up since before the game starts. A disease called the Blorbs is spreading through the Mushroom Kingdom, inflating toads like balloons. Definitely don't look up inflating toads on the internet. Then Peach calls an emergency meeting like she's in Among Us, and Bowser's given a vacuum mushroom that makes him inhale whatever is around him. Then he uses that to inhale Mario and Luigi. Fawful's goal isn't just getting the castle, or simply just taking over the Mushroom Kingdom, but he's after the Dark Star, which is an ancient evil entity sealed under Toad Town that he intends to use to become unstoppable. There's something about Mario RPGs and just always having an evil entity. I think what's interesting here is that there's two stories. Like, you have Bowser on the outside who's trying to reclaim his castle from Fawful, and then you have Mario and Luigi on the inside navigating Bowser's actual body and triggering his abilities from within. Then you have Starla pretending to be a random lady she calls Chippy to hide her identity. What really makes this game's story is just Bowser is one of the protagonists. I think the writing for him is some of the funniest in the series. Like, he just acts like himself here and actually lets his personality shine through. And even though he was a protagonist in Super Mario RPG, I feel like this is some of his best character development in the entire series. And by character development, I mean him pretty much learning absolutely nothing. Fawful as the main villain is also great, and I like how it ties back to a previous Mario and Luigi game. Honestly, you could probably have Bowser's Inside Story a little bit lower, but I just love Fawful as a character, and think that he does so much to really carry the story of this game. I also think that the concept's very funny, and I like the way it plays into progressing the story forward. And number 2, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. This is the game everyone who loves the series points to, and the story is a big part of why. It starts with Peach buying a treasure map from a sketchy merchant in Rogueport and mailing it to Mario, which is already a more interesting setup than like most of the recent games. She then gets kidnapped before he even arrives. Mario shows up, teams up with a Goomba scholar named Goombella, and goes hunting for 7 crystal stars to open the Thousand Year Door.
Say that again?
It's a sealed door under Rogueport, supposedly hiding a legendary treasure, and you have Grotus, the leader of the X-Nuts, or Cross-Nuts if you want to pronounce it that way, chasing the same stars. And what I love about the Thousand Year Door is that it has different stories running at the same time. You of course play as Mario and you find the crystal stars through wildly different chapters, which include a wrestling tournament, a pirate island, and a train mystery. You also have Peach interludes again here in the X-Naught base, and she starts developing a sort of friendship, if you want to call it that, with a computer trying to gain sentience. You have Bowser seemingly always being one step behind and having his little interludes and chapters. You also see characters like the Shadow Sirens and the X-Naughts plotting to stop Mario, and I just think it's a fantastic addition to this game to really bring it all together. You even have Luigi lore here. Like every chapter, when you talk to Luigi, he'll have a different partner with him and he'll talk about his own adventure that sounds like complete nonsense, and I honestly think it would be a fantastic side game in the series, and you can completely ignore that. And in addition to just the main story here, like the previous games, each chapter has their own story, but I think they're more developed here than almost any other game in the series. Chapter 1 has you fighting Hooktail and finding what happened to Koops' dad. Chapter 3, the wrestling chapter, has you uncovering just a huge conspiracy of what's been going on in the Glitz Pit. You have a whole town that's cursed and people are just turning into a pig when a bell rings, and then you learn that it's because of Dupless. And for those of you who played Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, I think one of the biggest twists was you actually playing as Dupless pretending to be Mario for a bit. And yeah, you can kind of figure it out, but if you're not paying attention, it can definitely catch you off guard. And of course, Chapter 6, the whole mystery section, my favorite chapter in the game, and the ability to just learn stories about what's going on, just really makes this lore full circle. And I worked on a video of lore of this game years ago if you want to check that out. But anyway, going back to the main story, after the Thousand Year Doors open, you learn the twist with the Shadow Sirens, who've actually been playing Grotus, who thought he was controlling them. And it might be one of my favorite twists, where a purple character ends up double-crossing who we thought was the main villain at the very end of the game. The Thousand Year Door's main story and the stories around it are fantastic, but of course at number 1 we have Super Paper Mario. Despite not even being considered an RPG by some people, it is easily the most popular pick for the greatest story in any Mario game. I mean, how many other Mario games have a whole chapter dedicated to you rescuing a butterfly from a Reddit mod? Now, Super Paper Mario asks you to be patient and press A ridiculous amount of times, but it pays off with a very emotional and surprisingly complex story with a ton of lore the average player won't even find, but we'll get to that. So it's like any other Paper Mario game with Peach going missing and the brothers paying a visit to Bowser, but the glove didn't fit, so Bowser gets acquitted. Well, not exactly. Count Bleck just shows up out of thin air, and chaos ensues with Mario getting transported to Flipside where he must help save the universe or die. Like literally, if you reject Merlin enough times, you get a game over. What I really do like about Super is how each chapter has a self-contained story that often ties into the greater story, and I've said this a few times, but I think it is very important for a Mario RPG story. You have Chapter 2 going through Merle's mansion to find out what happened to her as you deal with this abomination. And Mimi, of course, becomes a big deal as the game goes on. Chapter 5 has a feud between two civilizations that ends with a big twist that the Kragnons you'd been helping are actually the bad guys. Chapter 7 has you literally getting sent to the afterlife and ascending to the heavens to fight an ice demon. So basically like the average regular show plot. But what about the main theme here? Well, there's a giant purple void in the sky growing bigger with each chapter, and it was started by Count Bleck, who has the Chaos Heart and the Dark Prognosticus. And he wants to destroy the world because of his lost love, Timpani. Timpani ends up being Tippy, who's your companion, and they only realize it at the end. But before they can live happily ever after, Dementio takes control and double crosses him, being multiple steps ahead throughout. Then you defeat him, and the ending is pretty ambiguous for Bloomier, who is Count Bleck. I haven't even mentioned things like Luigi literally being mind-controlled into being a villain. Super Paper Mario has a great cast of characters with a lot of serious moments and themes you almost never see in a Mario game. It never feels like the story takes a back seat, but it feels like it's driving the experience, and it makes me sad that Miyamoto apparently is anti-Mario Story. And Mario Story is the Japanese name of Paper Mario, so I think it's kind of ironic. I just don't think any Mario RPG or Mario game in general really comes close to the story, so it's an easy number 1 for me. And that is my personal ranking of the best Mario RPG stories. Now, these are not objective facts, this is just my personal take, so if you disagree, let me know in the comments. And also be sure to check out all these other Mario RPG videos and subscribe. Now join my Discord, and I'll see you next time.